This is day 4 of the December 89 7-day retreat at Springwater. Someone said that listening to a talk may be just as arduous as giving a talk. I don't know whether it was in this retreat or previous to this that I mentioned it. It is arduous to give a talk. It's simpler to sit and listen quietly. And someone says listening is just as arduous as talking. It makes perfect sense. It is so. Why? Why is listening arduous? Listening to a talk such as this, because this is what we're doing right now. Is it because the mind is thoroughly habituated to go in the 10 directions? Pursuing thought, pursuing associated memory, associated impression, pursuing. Habituated to that. And to remain with what is going on right now, this instant, and listening openly, carefully, without prejudice. There's an ardor in that. The mind not flowing in its habitual grooves of either off on tangents or arguing with what is being said, or avoiding the disturbance of what something that is said arouses in one. So, to sit with what is being said and look instantly within of what it arouses and not go off with it. See it at a glance and yet continue listening. Is that possible? Disturbance and all, the body has already been disturbed by one word, one sentence, one idea. And is it possible to continue sitting with this disturbance without doing something about it, allowing it to operate and listening in the midst of it? I opened a letter yesterday and someone sent me a printed matter, a letter with an enclosure of a printed matter. It's a newsletter from a center. And the first thing on this newsletter was a quote by Krishnamurti. And it so applies to what is going on in a retreat such as this that I brought it here. And I will read that brief quote and maybe we will go on from there. Disturbance is essential for understanding, and any attempt to find security is a hindrance to understanding. It is obvious that most of us do not like to be disturbed. We think we have found a pattern in life, the master, the belief, whatever it is, and there we settle down. With that same mentality, we approach the various qualities of which we want to be rid. We do not see the importance of being disturbed, of being inwardly insecure, of not being dependent. We must go through tremendous upheavals, turmoil, anxiety. If we do not, we shall remain asleep. And perhaps that is what most of us want. To be pacified, to be put to sleep, to get away from disturbance, to find isolation, seclusion, security. Surely it is only in insecurity that you discover, that you see, that you understand. Please experiment with this. Maybe it is not until we are disturbed that we begin to realize how attached we are to our habits, beliefs, prejudices, ways of doing things, ways of thinking, to our ideas, to our shrines, mental or physical, attached to them and attached to the energy that comes from them. In attachment to a belief, whatever it may be, there is not just the idea floating around in the mind, but the idea has power to evoke energy in the body. The idea of God watching over me, having a path laid out for me, or having a bodhisattvic path. Belief in eventual enlightenment, in life after death. Belief in being essentially, from the beginning, perfect and complete. These aren't just ideas. These are powerful suppliers of energy. At the moment we're struck with anxiety or with a sinking feeling, afraid of ourselves, afraid of others, afraid of coming to an end or not getting through this. Tremendous power of prayer or visualization of words, remembrances, pictures, symbols. Sculptures, incense, the whole thing. attachment to it means the attachment to the energies that accrue from that. And getting used to living on these energies. And the disturbance when this is all questioned, put into question or absent for some reason or other. If the ideas are questioned or thought and idea slows down in the mind, or an accustomed activity accompanying meditation is not engaged in, then, as maybe all of us at one time or another have experienced, a tremendous dryness, aridity, like being in a desert without water, without flowers blooming on the side. So what we're asking is, no matter what state dawns at this moment, due to what is said or due to what comes up in the mind or doesn't come up in the mind, whatever state may dawn, can there be just that? And not a movement away, an escape into something that will provide what this state does not provide, or doesn't seem to provide. Energy, zest, inspiration, joy, happiness, whatever. This completely unconditionally listening to what's there now. Is that possible? Without the aid of anybody or anything brought up in the mind to trigger the chemicals in the body to give energy. And to see those processes as they happen, are about to happen, or have happened. As an understanding of what is going on in this human being, and has been going on since time immemorial. The escape away from the aridity of what is at this moment. Having a judgment about it, an opinion, and a conclusion about it. That this is bad, that this is, if I don't do something about it, it will be so forever after. It has no end to it. It needs help, or whatever, to be rid of it. And one hasn't begun to explore it in all its dryness. What is said right now in particular of a state of dryness applies to any state that dawns, or one just suddenly wakes up when has been in it for a long time. Pain or interminable thoughts about what will happen or what has happened, what will come of me, how will my life go on. Or the pain of sickness, not feeling well, maybe not having felt well in a long time. People are questioning this. Am I attached to that maybe? Am I attached to my sickness? And don't want to be disturbed in that? I say I want to be rid of it. And I do things about it, but deep down is there attachment and a shielding from the ultimate disturbance of questioning the whole thing freshly. with no particular aid, no particular means, and no particular promise of outcome. Is it possible for a human being like you and me to listen so quietly, so unmovingly meaning not away from, into something else, into words or labels, recognition, theory, or prayer or chant, whatever one's habit may be in dealing with pain, anxiety, or dryness? Is it possible to listen so unconditionally? Without making an effort, not through power of will, but because this is there. The there-ness and the awareness not being two separate things. In the awareness, though, no one who's doing it. Just a stopping and listening. Stopping meaning not going in the habitual channels of escape. Or wallowing, or finding fault. Looking for a cause close or distant. Just a total, one could use the word yielding, but there's no one there to yield. It's just what is there. That's all there is at this instant. Or is it all there is? We don't know. We have ideas about it. Can one find out? Can we be that free to look? Listen, be there. Call it what you will. Not to make a problem out of the word. Because this awareness, there-ness is not a word. It's a total state of being. Which does not exclude the people around one, the sky above one, the snow, ice, the creek, the sound of the water, or the birds, weeds sticking up out of the grass. It doesn't exclude anything. And it doesn't make anything out of anything. It's just what's there. Turbulent thought, pain, anxiety, or utter dryness. What is it? In this unconditional listening, maybe the listening starting superficially, and in listening, there is a deepening of listening. How that happens, I don't know. An inwardness of it. A non-interference. It doesn't interfere with anything. It doesn't want to change anything. It's not afraid of anything. It's just listening. Without ears. The whole body-mind in there, in that. When habit takes over, thinking habit, feeling habit, physical habit, one wakes up again. Maybe not immediately, maybe after 10 minutes. Time doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's only coming to, waking up and listening to the strength, the momentum of the habit. It wants to run because it always has run, but it doesn't have to. It can be listened to. It's the utterly amazing thing. No matter how deep or strong the habit may be, if it comes into awareness, it doesn't have to continue. It can be listened to. Maybe it continues, but it continues and there's listening. And in that it is not the same as it was when it ran underground, as it were. Right now is when looks at a little creek from the rail over the railing down at the bottom of the hill. Is so crusted over with ice. Huge waves frozen. They cascade. If one walks along the side and looks at the cascade, there's no cascade, there's just a sculpture of ice. But if there's very quiet listening, there's the sound of water underneath. Here and there, its movement visible. Underneath all of that formidable cover of ice. It may be arduous to listen because what is heard and seen is not what we want to hear and see. We have deeply ingrained ideas about ourselves, how we should be or want to be, or think we are. And our world is. But it may not be like that. The image may be false, not to the point, inaccurate. And yet preventing this quiet listening. Because it's there. This is what I am. This is what it is. I don't want to see what is there. I'm afraid. It's too disturbing to see violence in oneself, anger, envy, or jealousy. Too disturbing because I want to be a peaceful person. I usually am, at least I think I am. So is it possible to see the image and also see what is there welling up in one at one moment or another? And look at it, listen to it without prejudice, without trying to change it, interfere with it, get rid of it. just the directness and purity, immediacy of looking and listening, without the doer, without the judge, without the owner of what's there. What's there is what we are. There's not a separate owner of that. What we are at that moment in time. Somebody asked, doesn't this take a tremendous amount of effort and commitment, energy? And I don't know if I can muster this effort and energy to look. It sounds so arduous. I don't know if I can go with it. Does one have already ideas about it? And the ideas create the resistance? So often it's said that listening directly, unconditionally, is without effort. What is meant is without the effort of will, I must do this in order to be good, do right, do what's going on here, or get a reward. That's the effort of will. But energy gathering in what's there and wondering about it and listening to it is not the effort of will. It's just energy gathering. Energy which doesn't go here or there in habitual grooves. And awareness of habitual grooves interrupts those. And the energy may be there for just looking at the groove itself. Not as a continued tedium, but a revelation of what is going on inside, within ourselves and with each other. Sometimes someone will say, when I hear you talk, I tense up. What I hear, maybe I don't hear it right, maybe you don't mean it this way, but what I hear is you must do this and so forth. This is the right thing to do, something else is wrong. So how can one listen relaxedly, not tensing up at what is said, so that one can hear and listen of what is said, and not interpret it in old-fangled ways? That's the difficulty of talking and the difficulty of listening. It can get so groovy, sounding like a preacher or a mother. You should do this, you shouldn't do that. So if tensing takes place in listening, can that be included, listening to the tensing that's happening without making words about it? It can be felt. And if it is really felt, listened to, it doesn't have to continue. Because no one is threatening. No one is demanding or directing. We're in this together, looking at something together, without any division between us. I'm looking too. It's not somebody speaking from the pulpit and reading a sermon. It's human beings sitting together looking at human problems as they come up in a week of sitting silently, together and alone. Anger, disturbance, and dryness. Fear of losing, or fear of loss, or the pain of loss, not having what one is used to having. And is it possible in the midst of this ongoing thing to listen in a relaxed way, not tensing, which is our habitual way, giving attention to the tensing? That's why we say from the very beginning, sit as comfortably as possible, particularly during a talk, having the right chair, the right backrest. Not to run an endurance test, how long can I sit without moving? Then the body is tense to start out with. Is it possible to relax into the tension? Relax meaning not prejudiced against it, not wanting it to end, but entering into it with a mind and body that's open to feel what's there. Realizing maybe that the fists may be clenched or the jaw may be tight. It doesn't have to. It's habit. It's the past. It doesn't have to go on. If it does go on, can one keep listening to it, include it in the whole thing, without opposition or resistance to it? Two people said, "You still didn't say anything yesterday about how this sitting here, looking into oneself, may help the suffering in the world, help alleviate it." Shall we look at that again? Without knowing the answer. Just look at and question why we see ourselves separate from the suffering in the world. That's such a profound question. Are we separate from the world. We think we are. We've been told that. It's how we talk. Me and the world, or me and society. The individual and the mass, or the group. But can one begin to question that? Whether I or we are separate from the world, in our fears, in our suffering, in our pains, in our joys. In our conflicts, in our violence, anger, or moments of lovingness. Why do we feel that this is separate from the world? What is the world? It's human beings like you and me, everywhere, all over this globe, living in deep habitual grooves of thinking, which have been conditioned by parents, teachers, friends, books, symbols, weather, food, cultural environment. And those environments, cultural or natural, may be different. It's different for the Eskimo than for someone in the tropics. In a highly civilized or industrial country like here, compared to China or India, with not so much industrialization as yet. But conditionable and conditioned we all are, and unaware of the conditioning we are most of the time. And therefore functioning in habit, in reaction, in conditioned reaction. If you are angry at me, I'm getting angry at you. If you hurt me, there is the instinct to hurt back. If you enter into my territory, I'm protective of it. If you're interested in my mate, I feel rivalry and protectiveness or aggression toward you. Competing. There are some societies, I don't know how it is today, we learned this in anthropology, where competition is the evil. To stick out as an individual attaining something is not to be done. It's the group dynamics that are important, not the competition with each other or sticking out as an achiever. So that too can be conditioned, to be competitive or to go with a group. And what we habitually do and are, we defend, as we just read a little while ago in the quote. We don't want to be disturbed in that. And if someone would disturb it, we fight it off. And yet we come here for what? To find peace and serenity? Maybe that's what we come for. And what we find is that we're being disturbed, either by what someone says or what we find is happening in ourselves. Disturbing thoughts, disturbing emotions, disturbing blockages. Can one question into that? Be with it. Bring it to light. So that one human being does not run completely, automatically, mechanically in his or her reactions with himself, herself, and with each other. maybe 10 human beings, 20, 40 or 50, doesn't matter. But is this where change can happen? In this world? A human being stopping to look and find out and discover what moves us so dimly, darkly, and so conflictingly with each other and with ourselves, to shed light on that. And the amazing discovery that with shedding light on it, with seeing it, it changes. It's not the same dark habit of with a tremendous momentum to run, for running's sake, for security's sake. We all suffer. It's not just the world that suffers. We all do. That's what reveals itself in every meeting. There's tremendous suffering stored up in each human being. Not just the personal, but the dim awareness that this is shared ground. The sorrow of humanity is shared ground. And can one have insight into it, how it arises, how it is maintained, how it is fed, continues, and maybe how it can end? How can we help someone else's suffering if we don't understand our own? With which I'm not saying that there aren't people who do amazing things in relieving suffering, taking care of sick people with AIDS, people in the streets. But what goes on in helping someone? Is one really right there with whoever is there and with oneself? A transparency inside and out. Seeing that one can alleviate cold or sickness maybe, or hunger. But to find out that we're not separate from each other has to be seen by each one of us alone. No one can see that for another. And that's our greatest suffering, the suffering of separation, aloneness, abandonment, feeling of abandonment, isolation. Not aloneness, but loneliness. Aloneness is something different. So this human mind, which is not 2 billion of, I don't know how many human beings there are, billions and billions of separate little minds. It is one human mind of suffering, of wanting, of fearing. When something clarifies in this human mind, does this affect the whole human mind? It's a question that interests me tremendously. Some clarity or some moments of clarity or deepening of clarity in one place, in one human being. Does this affect all of us? I don't know. It may not be noticeable, but it may do that. I'm interested to find out more about it, but not at the expense of looking, whether there is motive to feel good about oneself as a helper, less skilled. Again, good energies from the thought, I'm doing something for humanity. Can one look at all of that easily, lightly, without being disturbed by it? that somebody raises such questions. Not leaving as taboo or sacrosanct any idea that has occurred to the human mind. Because with these ideas that we hold taboo or sacrosanct, we isolate ourselves. From what? From that which is when we don't feel attached to the idea of me, a self, something separate from the world. Not attached to the idea of me with all of its accoutrements that adorn the capsule in which we live. Is that possible? To walk, sit, eat, sleep, look at the creek without the separation of me, mine. And to look at each other in this way, without stuck in what happened yesterday or years ago, but freshly, this moment. This moment is fresh. That's the most amazing thing. It's not last moment. We will end here for today.